Hey, what is up, you guys? And welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of my Melodic Dubstep tutorial. I'm going to be applying the music theory concepts I talked about in the first video into building a harmony. So I got some great feedback from you guys in the last video. I realized I covered a lot of concepts. I went pretty quickly, and I'm just gonna recap on some things just so we can all be on the same page. Let me find a serum. I'll just make a new serum. So I want serum because it has the keyboard. You get that? Serum. All right. Okay, great. Keyboard, not covering anything. Okay. All right. So last time, the first thing I talked about was the A minor scale. So the A minor scale is all the white keys between A to A. So perfect. I then talked about the trick that you can pitch your synths down, and what you're pitching is the root note of the scale. And I didn't cover this well last time. The root note of a scale is the first note that occurs in the scale, and it's also it's in the name of the scale. So in the A minor scale, the root note is A. So that's the note we have to think about when we're pitching it. Okay. So the key of this track is in F sharp. I'll go ahead and show you the track now. It's skipping because my audio interface. It's a big project. Hopefully I can fix that soon, but you get the idea. So this track is an F sharp minor. Since we want the capability to play everything in A minor, because then we only have to worry about the white keys, we pitch the root note of A minor down to F sharp. So we pitch A down 1, 2, 3 semitones. So a semitone is basically an interval that consists of the adjacent note. So going up to B flat is 1 semitone up, or A to A sharp is 1 semitone up. It's also called a half step. So a semitone and a half step are the same. 2 half steps make a whole step. And that's the last time I'm ever going to talk about half steps or whole steps, but that's just some tidbits of extra stuff. All right. The next thing I talked about was the shapes of the triads that exist in the A minor scale. What's a triad? A triad is a fancy name for a chord that has 3 voices. What are voices? Those I would classify as a singular note. So if a triad has 3 voices, it has 3 notes in it. The triads that exist within the A minor scale are as follows. Here they are. The first triad, and I talked about Roman numerals last time. This is the first triad, and it's also Roman numeral 1. Here's the second one, and that's Roman numeral 2. Here's the 6th one, that's Roman numeral 6. Now, the great part about A minor is that all of the triads have the same shape. And I talked about putting my thumb on A. If I put my thumb on A, my fingers will naturally go into a position to play a triad. Now, I want you to imagine that this finger and this finger are cut off, so they're gone. And I put my hand on the keyboard, and I put my thumb on A. So I only have my thumb and my middle finger and my pinky on the keyboard. I would then play the first triad in A minor, which is ACE. So A, oops, take off the pitch. A, C, E. That sounds terrible. Okay. It's just clipping. Okay. All right. ACE. That's the first triad. And the great part about A minor is all the triads have the same exact shape. So I can keep this format with my hand, my thumb and my middle and my pinky. And I can move it anywhere, and I will always be playing a triad. So if I close my eyes and then just lay my hand on the keyboard, as long as my hand lands on all white keys, I will be playing a triad. So my hand, opening up my eyes, my thumb is on G, and these two fingers are cut off. So now I play GBD, which is the seventh triad in the A minor scale. So a key part to helping you make music is to, for us, for our purposes, is to know what these triads look like. And conveniently, they all have the same shape. And they all have the formula that you play a key, skip a white key, play a key, skip a white key, play a key. So using A as an example, A, skip a white key, C, skip a white key, E. Every single triad has that formula. Okay. I'm now going to use everything I just covered to talk about building chords. So before I get into building chords, I want to say that the rules I present here, well, they're not really rules, they're like guidelines. The point of this is to kind of shape a conventional mind. So there's two types of minds. There's the conventional mind, and then there's the creative mind. Everything I'm talking about here is for the conventional mind. The creative mind is up to you. So that's when you put your own spin on conventions that exist. And then you create, interesting music. Everything I'm talking about here is to get into a zone that I call the safe zone. The safe zone is essentially a place where you can kind of follow guidelines, and you'll make nice music. You'll make cookie cutter music, but it'll sound good. And you have to learn the rules, and then you can break them. So that's when you can get creative. All right. So philosophy aside, let's start building a harmony. So a harmony, all right, let me solo my voice. The harmony, I like to think of the harmony as the building block of a song, especially in melodic dubstep. Once you build your harmony, you have the blueprint for everything that you're going to do. Everything else will kind of follow the harmony. The harmony is like the leader of a tribe or something, or like the lead dancer. I don't know. He's the team captain. All right. So, building the harmony. You'll notice that the harmony is just a bunch of chords. And they're all going to be pretty much chords from here. They're all going to be triads, pretty much. So the way I go about building my chords is, now let's just listen to it before I talk anymore. All right. So before we go on, I'm going to delete. I want to delete things so I can, save my audio interface, but I don't know what I should delete. All right, we'll delete these two. Okay. All right. So that was nice. And that was basically what we call a chord progression. It's a series of chords that, come one after another. It's a progression of chords. So how do you go about building the chord progression? Basically, to be safe, to get into the safe zone, you would use the triads in whatever scale you're using. So remember, we're using the shape of A minor. We're pitching it down so we can play all the white keys, but we're actually in F sharp. Okay? So I talked about that at the beginning of the video. I talked about that in the last video, and I hope that makes sense. You pitch the root note to whatever scale you want to be in. So I have pitched all my synths down 3 semitones. The whole keyboard is shifted down 3 semitones. Now, when I play the A minor scale, I'm playing the F sharp minor scale. Okay. That's important. Okay, so some people were confused about that, so I wanted to go over it again. Now, building the chords. I would recommend, if you want to take my advice, write this down and kind of, that's your toolbox. These are all your tools that you have to build a chord progression, to build a safe chord progression, a cookie cutter chord progression, but it'll sound good. So let's look. Oh, and the other thing to remember that all the triads have the same shape. So even if you don't want to memorize everything, you know that you have that formula with your 3 fingers. Okay, so let's look at the first chord. The first chord, A, I see an A. Okay, before I talk about that, actually, I want to talk about one thing that's all the same between all the chords. You'll notice that there's 3 notes that are repeated. So I see an F, F, F here. There's an A, and there's an A here. There's 3 A's here. There's 3 G's here. So this is a type of chord voicing. It's very popular in EDM. If you go to a website like Nonstop 2K, and I'll link that in the description, and you download MIDI information from professionals' tracks, a lot of people like to use voicing like this. They repeat a certain note, and that certain note is the root note of the chord, not the root note of the scale. That's something else. That's A in A minor. This is the root note of the chord. So what is that? Let me explain that better. The first chord, I see an F, I see a C, I see an A. So what is that? Right here. That's the 6th chord. And you'll notice that the root note is here. The root note is the first note in this list, and it's repeated 3 times. So I would say that when I'm building these progressions, I typically use the position that I talked about, like 3 fingers. And when I was building this chord progression, the way I did it was I started with these 3 notes. So A, C, and F. So I had my hand on the keyboard. I was screwing around. So there's no like secret magic trick that I can give you to like actually come up with a chord progression. I was just screwing around, and I thought that A, C, and F. Can I play? A, C, and F sounds nice going to this next chord. It sounds nice. So what is this next chord? And it looks an awful lot similar to this one. And I'm going to talk about that more, but let's look at it. A, C, E. Well, that's the chord we've been talking about this whole time. That's the one chord. Great. So A, C, E. And look, the root note is repeated 3 times. All right. And you'll notice that every single one of the chords has 5 voices, 5 notes. Keeping the voices consistent is a part of being in the safe zone. It'll sound good. You'll be safe. That doesn't mean you should never not change the amount of voices, but the safe zone, remember. Okay. Next chord. So we have our A, C, E. So in Roman numerals, I would say, so that's a 6 to a 1. Okay. And now we have ACE again. GBD. What chord is that? 7. Okay. And you get the idea. So here are my tools. I'm using them all to make a chord progression. So what you would do is when you're writing music, you have your toolbox and you continually take from this toolbox and you create your chord progression. Okay. Some tips. I already talked about keeping the voices the same. Remember, these are safe zone tricks. It's not about being creative. It's about being conventional. Okay. The creativity is up to you. So keeping the voices the same sounds nice. Doubling or tripling the root note sounds nice. And notice the position of the voices. If I unfold it, you'll see that I'm covering 2 octaves. So F2 up to F4. That also sounds nice. If you can imagine a keyboard player, he would have like his pinky on the first F, his thumb on the next F, maybe, I don't know. And then he would be using his right hand to play the ACF. Probably. I'm not a pianist, but that's how I do it. That's how I play. And that sounds good because it's covering a wide range. So it sounds nice and big and epic. And that's what we want because it's melodic dubstep. All right. So that's important. The voicing. So this is something I would also refer to as voicing. It's like where the notes are located. So you'll notice that theoretically, I could have, added an A here. I could have added a C here. But you'll notice through experimentation, too many notes can sound cluttered. Not enough notes sounds empty. So that's up to you to find the voicing that you think sounds good for whatever you're doing. I like 5 voices. Sometimes I use 4. Typically a 4 to 5 for me. Okay. So what else did I want to mention? Okay, this is important. So earlier I was talking about that hand position, and you'll notice that the hand position more or less goes out the window. It's good to think about it in the terms of all of the triads have the same shape, but they only have the same shape in root position, right? So this ACF, my right hand is playing an A, a C, and an F. So where's Sarah? That's not okay. All right. ACF, it's still the 6th chord, right? It's still FAC. It's still FAC. It's just the F is now above it. And what that is called is the first inversion. So if I move this F above and play ACF from left to right instead of FAC, I'd be in first inversion. And then second inversion, as you may have guessed, is putting the A up. So I'd be playing A, C, and F. Okay. And why inversions are important has to do with the way chords sound nice progressing. And I talked about this a little earlier. I talked about how these two chords kind of look similar. And basically what I was talking about is the fact that the movement between the notes isn't drastic. So there's two notes that are actually the same. It's the A and the C. And then the F, these two Fs moves down to A, and this F moves down to an E. And basically, a safe zone rule is that smaller movements between chords sounds better. Will sound, I don't want to say better. I want to say it'll sound, you're safer. It'll sound nice. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do big jumps, but it sounds nice. If I kind of did like something where I did FCA and then like did a huge jump to a chord that shares no notes, it might sound jarring, and that might be what you want. But a good rule is that your hand and the position of the voices, less movement is safer. Okay. So you'll notice that if I had my hand on ACF, the only thing I have to do to get to this next chord would be moving my pinky down to an E, right? Ignoring the bottom two notes. But yeah, so that's another tip. So I'll go over the tips I just went over, and that is the voice count is nice. So 5 voices. Making the root notes, or tripling the root notes. And then smaller movements are safer. But you'll notice that it doesn't, it's typically, so here's an example of movement that's a little larger, but you can still see I keep the G the same. You know, I'm moving from, okay, actually I don't want to talk about this because that's not a triad. Maybe I'll talk about it in the next video, but that's not a typical triad. So I guess I can talk about that now. The other thing to mention is that, and this goes back to like the rules. You always can break the rules. So GAC isn't on our list. It's not, but it sounds good. In that instance, when I was screwing around, it sounded nice. So, always experiment. I think the last thing I want to mention is, this is a lot of different chords, but remember, they all have the same shape. And to kind of carry on with that thought that less movement is nicer, you notice that, let's see, the 2 chord is BDF. The 4 chord is DFA. they share two notes. Okay. So if you had this list in front of you and you were thinking, you know, what chord would sound nice after the chord I just played, you could try, you know, maybe FAC followed by like DFA could sound good. But because they share same notes, right? And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you continue on with Roman numeral analysis, so Roman numeral analysis is these numbers, right? So this is the first Roman numeral, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, this is the fifth. A lot of music theory, if you read a music theory book, they will go in depth about these Roman numerals and their movements. So they'll talk about like things like 5-to-1 movement and like cadences, and they'll basically give you like a guidelines of chords to use in a sequential order. And then they'll have you like analyze music, and you'll assign the chords, the Roman numerals, to chords in music. So I could, if I wanted to, do Roman numeral analysis for the entire thing, but I think that would be overkill. And that's something that you can do. That's something that you can do. The reason I wanted to mention it is because if you want to go out and study more music theory, now you can understand like a lot of what music theory is. And at the same time, I don't typically think about the Roman numerals like that. Most of the way I compose the chord progressions is following those like tips I gave you and just through experimentation. So I'm just like fumbling around on the keyboard, but I have these in my mind, you know. I know like that I could use these and they'll sound good. Okay. So I think that's it for this video. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to cover in the next video, and that is going to cover how to use the harmony to develop the other instruments. So I got rid of 2 of my sax, so it's going to sound less full, but let's listen to the track again. So you notice there's a lead. There's the harmony that we just talked about, and there's a bass. Okay. So I'm going to talk about, in the next video, I'm going to talk about how to use the harmony to guide you into making the bass line and making the melody. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. If you liked it, leave me a comment or subscribe. Check out my SoundCloud, soundcloud.com. I'll just put it in the description. But yeah, thanks guys, and I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. See you later.